Clerk, please call the roll.
Paul J. Brasco. Kathy Ann Harris. Randall J. LeBlanc.
Present.
Daniel P. Romard.
Present.
Alice A. Vidal.
Present.
Three present, two absent, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Just to acknowledge, well, this meeting will be recorded
Bye.
by Mr. Gamble.
See.
There's no vote on that, pretty much.
Nope.
All right.
Want to read the first matter?
Yeah. We approve the minutes first, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Motion to approve the minutes, all in favor say aye.
Who's making the motion?
Aye. There you go. All right. Program conclusion. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Minutes are approved. New matters.
Okay, first new matter is a resolution dealing with crosswalk safety that was brought in by President LeBlanc.
All right, we'd like to hear from a committee member, President LeBlanc.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Clerk, and other members of the committee. So this resolution deals with crosswalk safety, actually deals with pedestrian safety in crosswalks. And I was contacted back in September by a young mother who does an awful lot of walking around the city, Main Street, Moody Street, and she said she fears when she goes into a crosswalk. And she asked why Waltham didn't use the in-street signs that, say it's the state law to yield to pedestrians in crosswalks. You go to Belmont, they have them. You go to Watertown, they have them. You go to Lexington, they have them. I've seen some communities where it actually even states how much the fine is. So, she and I have had a couple of conversations. She had another recent incident over by Hannaford's, and, she said if she could be here tonight, she would be, but I wasn't sure whether she would make it. But in any event, I think that we should look at this very seriously. I'm not in any way proposing that everywhere there's a crosswalk in the city, you need to have one of these in-street units. There are places where they wouldn't be necessary, where they wouldn't make sense, where there's already signals, where there's the flashers. But I think that there's a lot of places where they do make sense. Around our schools, around, and on the route to schools, around our senior housing. The Vice President and I attended a meeting of the Disability Commission this past week, and the issue was that crosswalk near 48 Pine Street. And the big thing is everybody wants flashers. Well, flashers are a big ticket item. Flashers are certainly more expensive than something like this. And I'm not saying that we don't need flashers at 48 Pine Street, but for those areas where we maybe could make an improvement, this, might be an option. So I've got a request which I'm going to read, but attached to the request, just so that the councilors, have a little bit more background. And you all can go out there and do a Google search, and I would suggest that maybe you do a little bit of research before the next meeting where the traffic engineer will be here to address the matter. But everything I've read indicates that they are effective. Now, I've had some conversations with representatives of different communities, and I will be having more. And I hear that they do believe they're effective, but everybody doesn't love them. Whenever you do something new, whenever you add a new element, well, first off, there's resources associated with it. There's the money that you would need to purchase them, but there's also maintenance. And, you know, I've been told by a representative from one community that they move. And, you know, I don't know if there are some out there that wouldn't move, but in this particular community, the product that they bought moves. You know, he said it doesn't move a lot, but as it's inching, you know, away, somebody needs to go out periodically and make sure that they're properly positioned. But in any event, I think that it's worth us looking at, and so my request is, it's a two-parter. Request that the traffic engineer Garvin attend the next Public Works and Public Safety Committee meeting to discuss the use of in-street state law yield to pedestrian crosswalk signs that would be strategically placed in crosswalks around the city to include main ways and crosswalks near schools and senior housing complexes. So that's the first part of the request, if you want to vote. Mr. Clerk, should we vote the parts separately, or can we vote them together?
Okay.
Okay, and then the second part is further request that traffic engineer Garvin prepare an estimate of what additional financial resources his department would need to implement this effort. So that's my request.
Okay. The request, was any comments? Councillor Romard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, mentioned this on the request, I wasn't sure whether we had a chance to chat after, but I certainly wanted to thank the President for bringing this in. Just the week before, so it wasn't last week, the week before, I had contacted the traffic engineer about crosswalks, not so much about signage, and that was much like you spoke around, mine was really around the schools, but certainly elderly housings, anything like that. He did come back with a response. It'll be great to have him come in and chat about these signs and about crosswalks in general. That I was asking for crosswalks really from, you know, Lexington Street here right down to Plimpton. I don't know if it's the same mother that you spoke with, but when I was holding signs for the election this year, she walked by with her daughter, and she walks her daughter to school from, you know, Curve Street all the way down to Plimpton. God bless them. And she was mentioning, to your point, there's fear when she crosses some of these streets that there's just, in this case, no crosswalks. So having to look at this signage along with crosswalks, I think is great. And again, just wanted to thank the President for bringing it in.
Thank you, Councillor Robert. Councillor Harris.
Councillor Harris.
Present.
Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too want to echo gratitude for bringing this forward, Madam President. You know, as you guys know, I represent Ward 8, and on the south side, there are a lot of walkers to the Whittemore School, and it is a lot of streets that these parents are having to cross, and there's a fair amount of congestion on Parmenter with school drop-off, which we're looking to address. But the feedback that I get from parents pretty regularly is the need to have clearly marked crosswalks and a way that also drivers driving down those streets recognize that there's a crosswalk there and would slow down. And I think visual aids like this and these in-street kind of signage allows people to see that. It's metallic, it'll be viewed at night. And, you know, this would be, I think, a two-pronged strategy. You know, we are looking at a few places where blinkers or those flasher lights would be a good idea, but there's also a definite need for this. And I would really also like to hear from the traffic engineer on this matter. And you know, having already asked the traffic commission to do a study on Lowell Street, I think this would be very key to bring into
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Randy LeBlanc. Thanks. I'd like to say the same sentiment and thank Council President for bringing this in. There are like 48 Pine Street. If they do traffic studies, I think, and we could actually hear from an off-committee member that might have some input on this, is that there has to be, when they do a traffic study, there has to be a certain amount of pedestrians and a certain amount of traffic to even put up the, what is it, RRFBs, rapid response beacons. And if it doesn't qualify, you don't get them, even though you might have a crosswalk. You might have a place that doesn't qualify for one, but it's a safety issue with the elderly or what have you, so having, you know, everyone, you know, texting and driving or what have you, not paying attention, you have, you know, crossing a crosswalk ahead, at least, there's a couple of chances, so they same sentiments, and bring that in. And, make a motion to hear from our committee member? Yep.
Go back to the in-road use signage, that's come up before numerous times. I've always been in favor of it, committee's always shot it down. The reason is, they get hit, they get displaced, they get knocked over, they get ran over. They're rubber mounted. I've seen some in other communities, almost spring loaded, that if it, you know, it's lag it to the ground somehow, some way, and if it does get bumped, you know, if it's on a springboard, it's not gonna, the other ones, town of Weston has them. From according to other committee members, they've tried them in the past, many years ago. I've been here 29 years, I don't remember ever seeing one, but again, I wasn't looking for them. But every time that's ever come up, it's been shot down by the committee, just as an insight. Again, not saying it's gonna be shot down this time, Mr. Garvin in to explain. The RRFB, it's the number of people crossing the street at any given time. I don't know what the formula is, how he comes up with that formula. But we recently did all like the river walk. Again, whether that met the criteria, but it's true what you said, but I don't know if it's 100% accurate, because I don't know his method or what his how he comes about doing them. I know Councillor Fowler, 2 years back, asked one for one of the parks, and he got denied. And I believe because of the number of pedestrians crossing, even in the summer. But again, that, Mr. Garvin could answer those questions more.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I believe it's state regulated on when he can do it and when he can't,
Yeah.
based on that. And what I was sort of referring to, like with the 48 Pine, or even on Forest Street, the Ward 1 councilor, even if they do put the RRFB, is that prior to that, not maybe on a signpost,
Yep.
you know, 50 yards before it,
Yes, I agree.
approaching crosswalk, you know, yield ahead, something to that effect was sort of what I was.
And I agree with you. It might, to me, and I would say common sense comes, you know, the math, the numbers might not be there, but if it's going to prevent somebody getting killed, especially like you said, the world of everybody texting and tweeting and not paying attention. I mean, again, the other thing, the downfall from the experts at the RFP, they say if you start putting too many of them in, people start ignoring them. Which makes sense, it's like anything else. You flood the gates, they're not gonna pay attention to it. One other instance just recently just came up last month's meeting, the crosswalk at the skate rink,
Yes.
which we've made improvements over the years, but again, at the rate of speed on Tom Pond Road, so we're now looking into adding an illuminated pedestrians crossing ahead sign back from the block corner. So that's an option, like you said, we're even doing a solar thing. And the solar stuff has come a long way, so there are options out there, but again, not to speak to Mr. Garvin.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yield the floor, wish to hear from our committee member, Councilor LeBlanc. Do you have any input?
No, well, I would just say that I had heard that the Traffic Commission had addressed this in the past, but again, you hear from enough people that they're an issue. I'm glad to hear that you were, you know, supportive. You know, stuff happens, you gotta fix it. It's like I said, it consumes resources. I don't know of any community that invested in them that then pulled back and took them down. So,
Other than with the months they do it for the plow.
Right,
But
exactly,
other than that, yeah,
exactly.
when we know it's snow.
yeah.
Councillor Brasco.
Present.
Welcome.
You need to vote the request.
All right.
On the motion for approval, on the motion, I would move for approval on the two motions. That was actually the request, right?
The request, right. All right. The request, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Guys have it.
to table.
All right.
Thank
Councilor-
you.
Councilor Romard, table, all in favor say aye,
Aye.
opposed say no, ayes have it.
President, you coming back? You coming
I
back?
will. Call me when you need me.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, resolutions, building, plumbing, wires inspections.
Councillor LeBlanc? Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in, guys. One thing is the permitting process going online. I know it's a process where you start, you can't just all of a sudden go online because the city would come undone. So, and whereas it's, you know, much more efficient for the personnel to be doing it where the builder goes online, fills it out, there's a whole bunch of drop-down windows with questions, you can't go any further till you click through it. Bunch of information can be stored there, you know, you need to go to engineering, and there's a 30-day process there. Because we found even with some of the I&I stuff we did, it was one of the largest complaints that were coming in was I&I fees and nobody knew about them, or whether it's opening up the streets, or whether it's, I didn't know I had to go to engineering, it was 30 days there, or I didn't know about the smoke detectors, I didn't know whatever. It can all be done online. I know you have, and you can speak on this, I know the process has been started, I don't know what we can do to help. And one of the recommendations I have is, the town of Wellesley, what they did now is you go online and you fill out the permit online. And there's little drop-down menus, like if you don't have your, you know, they have, you know, sort of like Newton, they store the liability insurance. And they can check, you submit them once a year as opposed to with every permit, they just check it, it's not another piece of paper every time. But if you haven't submitted one, you can't click to the next one. So you're on your own to get yourself through there, but it saves the building department a ton of time. But Wellesley's is done with the application, fill-out part of it is online. You're not actually applying for your permit online though. So then you have to print the sheet, but you went through the whole process and were told basically online what you needed, because they're, you know, that was their first step as to how they could do it without creating a nightmare for them. So you go in with this nice filled out printed sheet, everything's legible because it's all the boxes checked online and everything, and then you have all the paperwork because it told you exactly what you needed and what you didn't. And it's a big help because even though it's supposed to be a state building code and everybody should be following the same thing, it's town to town, what you need, what you don't need, and I hate to say it, we go to town and we just look stupid because they're like, no, you need that. All right, well, nobody else does. Well, you should know better. Okay, yeah, it's okay. But it would help as far as the educational portion, you know, free you guys up in time. So if you could, I know you've started the process and you were working on tablets and all that. So I'll let you guys speak on and give us an update on how we can.
Sure, so,
We'd like to hear from our team member. Oh, yeah, sorry, I'd like to hear from our committee member.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say no.
so, the mayor, allowed me to form a committee to, study permitting systems back in 2015. We assembled, myself, the inspector of wires, CPW, fire department, engineering, health department, we all got together and looked at a few different types of permitting systems. What we found as a committee is that all these permitting systems pretty much do the same thing. They all offer the public portal that you refer to. Every one of them are basically, they all kind of function the same, maybe a different look with each one of them, but for the most part, they all perform the same function. Electronic storage of plans, there would be no more storing plans down in a room. You basically would attach them to a permit. All of these things have capabilities now. Within our city, we have a current system called MS Govern by Harris that basically is the permitting system that we've had since 2003, 2002. And we have so much information that's already stored there. What the committee decided, or what the IT director decided, was that rather than go out and buy a brand new system and start over, we believe that we can take the governance system and pretty much mask over what we have there, allowing the information that we have already gathered, all the data that we've gathered over the past 15 years to be able to stay in the database. What the object is to try and, first of all, is to get field inspections real time. As inspectors are out in the field, they'll be able to basically enter inspections real time. So the first step was to increase the server size to be able to handle the bandwidth that's required to be able to broadcast online inspections that come real time onto the permitting system. So we're currently at the cusp of starting a trial with I don't know if some of you may recall, last year I was allowed some allocation out of a code enforcement fund. I was able to purchase a tablet. That tablet is right now is being programmed and being pretty much honed into being able to start these online inspections. The plan is to be able to get the system to work online, outside in the field. Once that's accomplished, then we need to increase our basically our memory and our software to be able to handle a system that works on a different version. Right now, we're like a 2.0 version, and we'd be going to like a 4.0 or a 4.5. That's going to require a pretty substantial increase in upgrade for computer equipment. We had to buy, the IT department had to purchase a server just to be able to handle this. Now, to be able to handle the capacity that's required for a new permitting system, that's going to be something that we'll work on once we have the field inspections up and running. So we're going to run a trial for the next month or so, make sure that the Toshiba pad that we purchase is going to work, and then we'll probably purchase 3 more. And then the first thing will be is in the field reporting real time, so that a wiring inspector can sign off on one thing, and the building inspector will follow and know that he can now sign off on the project because the wire inspector and the plumbing inspector both are out there. So it's a progressive process where we first have to get this done, and once we have this up and running, then we can go to the next phase, which is giving Govern a new facelift or a new look, a new dashboard where it's a little bit more user friendly. Right now, there's a lot of manual processes that are involved with Govern, and they're cumbersome. And to a person who doesn't know how to use the Govern system, it's kind of it's an unfriendly thing. Once we have the new look and the new face, and we're able to enter these permits a little bit quicker, Govern does offer an online portal for the public. And the way that will go is that the public will start off real small. It'll just be roofing and siding permits, electrical permits, and probably plumbing and gas permits. Those will be the first ones that will be available online. You would still be able to enter a permit and perhaps print it out and bring it in, and then we would process it given how much information is required for each. But Marshfield, the town of Marshfield has a similar system that's been up and running for years. I was a builder for a good number of years, and I worked on their system, and their system works very well. It's all electronic approvals, it's all electronic processing. You print out the permit, you print out the approved plans, because those are stamped electronically. So all these systems all kind of work the same. Our thing is being able to turn over the big paper beast that we are to a more streamlined, automated. I think we're still about a year out before we can start to see some significant changes to it. But we are on the way, and I do expect to have this online inspection up and running shortly. So that's the gist of it right now.
The portal about actually filling them out online.
Yeah, there should be, with it, we're hoping by the end of the year. I'm just not sure what's required for IT service to be able to handle that kind of capacity.
Right.
But I think we're probably at least a year away from the public being able to do it. And again, that's without corrupting or losing the data that we already have, because we've been accumulating information for 15 years, and we believe it's a lot more conducive to be able to use the system that we have and adapt a new system on top of that to keep the old information, so that we don't have to take all the databases out and reinstall them in another permitting system. And then I think once we have a system that's user friendly, we can probably get all departments to work more more conducively to for such things as the assistant city clerk just mentioned, fuel storage permits and things like that, tax liens. Those flags should be able to pop right up. If there's a moratorium, I know that we talked about that not too long ago. A moratorium flag should, CPW can put that flag on there and just say that there's a moratorium, and it'll be a note in Govern. So we're hoping in the next 6 months to make some headway on this. It's been a little bit slow because, again, we hadn't had the computer memory and capacity to be able to do this, so I'm confident that we're on our way.
Is Govern the best program to use?
Govern is about the same as all the other programs. We looked at some of the bigger ones. Acela would probably be the biggest one that we looked at, and Acela has a great program. It goes into, it has multi-portals for planning and land use, and they really cover everything. I mean, all the way, you know, everything from a tax lien right up to a planned urban development. But Acela has a one-size-fits-all. Govern is our current system, and we believe that we can get them to customize a system that is gonna work a little bit better for Waltham. So I would say that they're no better and no worse. It's just a matter of getting it glued onto the screen that we have now and be able to upgrade our computer equipment and software and servers to be able to handle it, you know. So we have kind of a two-pronged problem there. We don't wanna lose the information, and we don't really quite have the technology that we should. I think once we have a plan in place, then we can come to the city council, get funding for it and move it forward, but we're still in that, you know, we're just in that phase right now, we're still testing.
What could we do to help speed it along? I mean, most of the neighboring towns are online, and even like Milton.
Yeah.
I was just pulling permits there, and we went on, we filled the whole thing out, printed it. They emailed us the invoice.
Mhm.
I don't think they take, some of them do and some don't take credit cards online. We mailed them a check, and 3 days later,
Right.
there was an email back that says your permit's been approved, feel free to click and print it out. And we spent, the building department in Milton spent no time with us, meaning
Right.
we didn't use any employee time whatsoever.
Sure.
What would be the next process to sort of help speed it? I mean, you guys are still doing the card stock, you have to go out and buy the card stock, right?
Yeah, I mean,
That's
you
one of
know,
the biggest complaints.
unfortunately, I inherited a system that worked
Yeah, I
very
know,
well.
that's
Worked
what-
very
yeah.
well, but is labor intensive. If I didn't have my staff, we wouldn't run, because it requires hands, it
Yes.
requires paper, it requires manual filling out. I'm the first one to wanna be able to change this, but, because it's such a big ship, you don't wanna steer it too
No, I-
quickly, because we'll
yes,
tip.
Correct.
You know, so, I would say that if I can maybe report back to you in writing, in say a month and a half or so, once we have a successful, online transmission, and we know that, you'll actually see me come in and ask for more funding out of my code enforcement fund to be able to purchase probably 3 more tablets. So we're gonna try it experimentally with the wiring inspector, the plumbing inspector, and, the building inspector with just simple inspections, just to see
Right.
how it runs, and then we might even let the commercial inspector do it for a little bit, just to see how it goes, and then it'll start off with a simplistic amount of permits, and we'll work out from there. But I would say the best thing is that I maybe report back to
Yeah, I
council
appreciate
in
that.
writing, and I'll alert the clerk.
Right, yeah, because like you say,
Yeah,
too big of a shift.
Yeah,
Change is bad, but.
yeah, we've stalled last year because we were
Right.
trying to get funding for this server, and now that we're all straightened out on that, I think we're gonna get moving on, we're gonna see some progress this year, so.
Excellent, thank you very much. Commissioner Wise, had anything else?
No, the only, I agree with you,
Okay.
being able to go in and fill an application out and print it out, so it's nice and neat. We take a permit, I can't read what the guy wrote, you know, the addresses are wrong. I don't know, again, what Bill was saying, that will come into play sooner than later, hopefully. The only process on mine, we take permits in, and we issue receipts, permits immediately, no plan review, most, you know, residential bathroom.
Right.
We all look at the bathroom,
Right.
nothing, you know. Problem is, we don't process that permit till check is in hand. So it would be helpful, or even helpful for myself, that it's a nice printable, legible permit.
Says permit pending.
But, yeah, exactly, but so if that's something, even maybe move on quicker than later, if this gets delayed, maybe at least, that maybe a
Yeah.
small portion, you know. But again, unlike the larger permits, there's a 30-day, you know, wait till they review the plans, stuff, other than roofing and, I mean, the simple siding ones, which are pretty much just handed out, so
Yeah.
same as the
We
last
issue
one.
roof permits pretty much over the counter.
It's sitting in front.
There was a learning curve filling out Wellesley's online.
Right.
I mean, I spent an hour and a half yelling at the computer the first time, you know,
I know bosses
why did
like
they do
that.
that?
But I
And-
I would agree, though, it's redundant to have an applicant come in with 4 different or 5 different applications, and each one requires a certificate of insurance for each one. It should be on an account where someone has a login number with an account number, and, you know, was able to just, you know, log in as many permits as.
They hold on to a copy of your, they have a copy of your license, they have a copy of your, you know,
Yep.
workers' comp, general
Right.
liability, whatever they require, and you don't have to redo that step every
Yeah,
single
and that's a
permit.
built database, because I worked over there, so that database is built. after a series of permits. So again, we believe that government has that capability, and we should be able to have that each individual builder will have an account. And I do see this thing getting underway this year. It's been stalled, but I think that we're on our way, so.
Thank you very much, I appreciate you guys.
Real quick, the liability, which we currently, we take it once, we scan it, it's on a spreadsheet, we don't ask for it periodically, secretary will go through, the ones that are expired, remove them, and then when the electrician comes in to pull another permit, we make sure it's a current
Right.
liability, because we don't need constantly, said, majority guys come in every day, every time they pull a permit, even if it's 5 different days, with the same stack of papers, and half of it it's all in the
Right.
file, right?
It's all
So just
redundant.
sort of-
Even though it's expired in Milton from, you know, the policy period is this date to this date, and when you go online and pull it up, it tells you you're expired, you need to submit another one.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, state building code requirements are redundant, but they are required, so that's why we have to get, you know, waste affidavits are, you know, are unique to a building permit, so.
Right.
yeah, so-
Thank you guys very much. I have no further
Thank you.
questions.
Yep, Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to the committee member. I just want to ask a few questions about the Govern and Excella software. So is that a service model or something that you pay per fee licensing? That's nothing we install at the city level, right? You're licensing to a third party?
Currently, we are licensed by Govern, and we have a yearly contract with them. With a new permitting system, there'll be a new contract with a new licensing. There'll be so many users that the system will, the city will pay for, and the number of allowed or authorized users will probably increase as the system becomes more user-friendly.
So when you come back with your scale or your multi-pronged plan, will you include those prices for how that would scale
It will,
out?
yeah, we will have a price, once we figure out how we're gonna build this thing, and, because Govern really has to customize it for the city.
Okay. And then my second question is what you're doing at a hardware level. So right now you have this Toshiba laptop that you're working with today. Who's configuring that laptop to work for the 2 pilots that you're running, wires and plumbing?
Sure, so, IT is working with, MS Govern right now to program, the tablet to communicate. They are pretty much at the end of that, and we should be able to get the, you know, the tablet within the next week or two for it.
So that's the pilot right now, is to configure
Correct,
the
yeah, so
laptop
we-
so it'll speak to the Govern software for
Right.
these 2 pilot programs?
Correct, and all 3 or 4 inspections, you know, wiring, plumbing, civil building inspection, will all be, and we're gonna test this thing for about a month or so to make sure that's the proper tablet to have, and then we'll purchase a few more, yeah.
That's my next follow-up, is are you piloting also other alternative laptops? Because, you know, is Govern making the recommendation on that hardware requirement?
That Govern made the recommendation on the Toshiba it's called the Toshiba ToughPad, and I think for a reason, because you're on the job site, it has a plastic cover, it's guarded, it's warranted, you can take pictures with it, it's multi-purpose, you know, and so, this is the recommended tablet to have in the field.
Okay, and then my other follow-on question is, if we're running a service model with Govern and Excella, what is the purpose of acquiring a piece of hardware like a server? Why would the city need to acquire the server and have that in the IT department if we're talking directly in the cloud?
So, I guess an IT guy would explain it, a garden hose to an 8-inch water main.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Right now, we're
Yeah.
working on a garden hose, we don't, you know, the server
it's an
just, the
interim
server
thing?
just can't handle that kind of
Okay.
information. So
Okay.
to have broadband information come across the internet, you need a certain size server, and we just don't have it. And Acela is not actually part of this, right now, this is just MS
Just
Government.
Govern.
Yeah, Acela was one of the programs that we looked at, along with View Permit and a bunch of others, and this is what we determined to.
And I'm sorry, I was taking notes, but it was going pretty quick. What is your timeline to pilot now? T plus what? When do you plan to pilot for wires and plumbing and then be able to report how that worked?
So if this test over the next month goes well, I would expect that I'll be back here in April to ask for more funding, for more tablets. And I would say that, once we purchase those tablets, then we'll be in the field with field inspection, and we'll go to the next tier, which will be how we're gonna mask over this permitting system to, you know, and then what is it gonna take for computer capacity to be able to handle that kind of information, so,
Thank you.
yeah, so.
No more questions.
All right, thank you very much. Councillor Romard, please.
Thank you, Councillor LeBlanc, for bringing this in. Again, something I think is critical, and we sort of need to move forward with it. The only thing I would ask Mr. Forty is if you said you would provide something to the council here, or the committee, if you could give us I'm gonna say, I'll call it a project plan. So the steps that you plan to do, and the date complete by. So I know you went through several things, you got a pilot, then you wanted to upgrade and get new equipment, just sort of a timeline for that, so that we can have it here. If people ask, we can talk about it, and then, you know, we here as a committee can sort of work with you in tracking that. If there's something that's being delayed, come see us, we'll help you, whatever we can in that. So that would be, just to have a, like I said, a general project plan. It doesn't have to be too elaborate, but, you know, sort of a brain dump, everything that you know that you're just talking to us. Put it on a timeline so that we can track it, check it off, show progress, all of that. Because I do think it's critical, and we're probably well behind the 8 ball on this.
I would agree.
Even though you say we'd like to do it shortly and everything, we all know that shortly could be 3.5, 4 years. So it makes no sense that we wait that long. So we'll do whatever we can in terms of requested funding, but we just need your help to get that timeline in as best you can, and like I said, work through it.
I can provide you with a report of what's happened in the past and you know, where the progress has been.
Yeah, yeah.
And where we're going and what the hopeful goals are anyways,
Yeah,
you know.
actually, absolutely, I mean.
Yeah, the realistic, you know,
Yeah,
the realistic
do the best
timeline.
you can with it, you know. We're not gonna dock your pay yet if you don't meet the goals, but it's something that we can work through as
Okay.
well. Just keep track of this, because I do think it's critical. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Romard. Councillor Brasco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Forty. The development of technology and everything like that, you know, obviously isn't new to just the building department. It's across the board with many different departments. As you can advance with the technology, we can streamline government and reduce the red tape that people actually have to experience. They do the online building permit process down in Providence, which is a very large city. So, you know, you can even use different cities for examples for what we might be looking for. But, you know, they even went into, which was a very archaic system, in the death care industry. When we went into an online system, the state actually initiated a program starting about 1.5 years ago with the virtual gateway, which even the assistant city clerk will tell you, it used to be a hand process. You know, if for example, if somebody died in Gloucester tonight at 1 a.m. and I went to Gloucester and removed them back into our funeral home here in Waltham in our care, the following day I'd have to drive all the way back up to Gloucester to the Board of Health, file a certificate within the Board of Health, then bring it over to the town clerk's office or the city clerk's office, have it certified and registered, and then be able to produce that legal document to the family. The state went to an online system where now everything is electronically entered into the system for the entire state, so that if you live in Gloucester, but you know, if you live in Waltham but you die in Gloucester, I can go to the city clerk's office here in Waltham, streamline government. We don't send out people or personnel out to these Board of Health anymore. The online payment system is where we have, some cities have the ability to opt in or opt out, which means you can pay by mail, or if you opt in, it means you have to pay online immediately. And like you said, they don't issue the permit unless you pay. And once you pay, you get your permit. Believe it or not, you need a permit to be either buried or cremated in the state. Most people don't know that, but there's a process and a legality. And it's just government, and honestly, it has streamlined, you know, many of the funeral services and funeral businesses in the state, and just by having an online system. So, I mean, it's essential to help facilitate. And I know it's, you know, much more complex on the building side of things, but I think that
Well, it sounded
we're in the era.
It sounded pretty similar to pulling a building permit.
Yeah, I mean,
It's just
honestly, when
you know?
you would go in, like the city of Waltham, you know, you go to town hall expecting the Board of Health to be in City Hall,
Yeah.
and when you go to Gloucester, or you go to Danvers, or you go to this community, and they tell you, yeah, no, it's 3 miles down the road, take a right, take a left, it's in this old school building, and then you're,
Right.
I mean, it was the most archaic process you could possibly have, and they made it a lot easier. The state of New Hampshire had it for many, many years, but Massachusetts waited and dragged their feet and finally adopted it, and made the program worse, actually. The state of Massachusetts can always mess things up. But, I mean, it's good now that it's in place, but we'd like to see government and the red tape, the process of building streamlined, so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Second time around, Councillor LeBlanc.
Thanks. And something that Councilor from Ward 1 touched on is, there anything, and, you know, sometimes if you go out and do this, it's a big waste of money because you decide that was the wrong program. Is there anything we can do parallel, like can you start working on the 2.0 to the 4.0 jump now, so that it's ready when you get to that point, as opposed to doing it step by step, And I agree, sometimes you go like, Neb's had a deal for us for the 3-part invoices, so they had a special deal if you bought 5,000 of them, we did, and within 6 months, we went computerized, and I got 2 boxes of them for $500 just sitting in the corner, so, you know, I understand that portion of it, but if this is the way you guys are gonna end up going, is there something to do parallel so that it speeds up the process, as opposed to doing it step by step?
So I recall that in 2016, the mayor did approve a capital funding for the IT department specifically for this reason. I had asked for it in my capital budget, and I believe it got moved over to IT. I can look into that to see, but I think the reason why we haven't purchased any huge servers yet is because we still haven't worked out that detail with Govern yet. We want to make sure that Govern's the right answer for us as well.
Right.
If we find that this inspection process is going to be well worth it, and we decide that we're going to move forward, because they still haven't sold us on it yet. We're working toward an field inspection system, you know, to make sure that we're going to be happy with what they can do, because they haven't shown us their true capabilities yet. So until we know even what a prototype looks like, we're not going to know what equipment to buy.
Because, I mean, if it's the wrong program, you're only
Right.
doing it just to save
We
your
don't want to buy a server
database.
that's not going to have enough.
Save your
capacity,
database,
right?
it
Yeah.
might be less painful in the long run to have somebody download it and upload it
Right.
across.
I can include that in my next report.
And one other question is, some of the towns, like Councillor Brasco pointed out, have the online permitting, and the town of Milton, when we went and filled it out, it said permit pending. And we didn't actually catch it, and so I was talking to Bill, he said, you got your permits? Yeah, we got your permits. He said, he goes, all right, he goes, shoot me a copy of it when you get it. I said, okay, great. So we went back in, I went in because we printed out, keep it in the file to bring out to the job, I went, wasn't there. We told them, I remember doing it, because the secretary actually does it now. So we went, we looked, and it was an email said, we went into their portal, and it came up as permit pending, payment due.
Right.
So then all we did was we mailed them a check, and then we got an email saying it was updated. Now, the credit card ones, you know, doing it online with a credit card, is the 3.5% fee, or 2.5%, whatever it is, 2.5% fee. Some of the programs, so I haven't experienced this myself, but somebody told me some of the towns, I think it was if the permit fee was under $500, you could pay it online. If it was anything more than that, you had to pay by check, because I think they didn't want to lose the percentage as it ramped up to a $15,000 permit and have these people get trips to Aruba on their points. But it was under 50, and I believe that a personal, it's not part of the system. I guess the person processing it has to check off whether they can pay online or not, was what I was told. So if it's, you know, let's say it was $100 permit, where it would just be like a small electrical or small gas one, you don't wanna deal with it, when you're processing it, you can click, okay, it's under the 100, whatever the window is that's set. Click, now they have the option to mail a check or pay it online, and you might get 16 minutes later, payment processed, boom, goes right back, you know, like you're talking about the real time, you know, something that could be, and I don't know what I'm not gonna make a recommendation on the percentage of the dollars of whatever, I'm just, you know, what I've experienced sometimes. So.
Quite frequently, I'll get, do you take debit cards, do you take credit cards?
Mm.
No, typically, check.
Right.
You know, I know when the city of Boston started, it was a nightmare. I'm sure you experienced it, Bill, you probably have, I haven't had the experience, but you want to spend 3 hours to try to put a permit in.
It's like going to the registry.
You know, it was a disaster.
Mhm.
So it just came, you know, a lot of guys just said, well, you know, and then, you know, as time progressed, it's got better. And like you said, there's more cities and towns that are incorporating this, and again, there's different systems. So I think it's it's time for us to move in the future in both aspects, but to jump in with both feet and start spending all types of money and stuff, and then find out, you know, something, this may be good for Milton, it may be good for Quincy, but it might be good for Waltham.
It's not town-specific, it's all over the map. And what, the thing you can't figure out is, you get their system down in this town, you've been working there, you know it, the building inspector changes, and now what you did know, you don't know. And I went into Cambridge and I thought it was gonna be a root canal. And I walked in, and it was the easiest thing I'd ever done. They said, "Do you have your checkbook with you?" "I do." "Okay, wonderful." And it was the 3-part carbon copy that I was talking about for the invoices. The guy filled it out, wrote a fee on there, and it was double or triple what I was used to paying. And he said, "Great." He tore it off, he said, "Go pay that woman over there." She told me what the check was. If a normal fee is $50, this was $175. I wrote the check for $175, I passed it to her. She actually, he gave the whole triple part. She tore it off and said, "This is your permit." And I walked out with it in 6 minutes, 5 minutes, done. And I, like I said, I thought Cambridge would have been, and that was the strangest interaction I'd ever had in a 5-minute permit. So it is, you know, it is, but, and Wellesley, who, they're brutal, but I shouldn't say that in a public meeting, but it is tough there, but this has helped a lot, because it actually took personalities out of it, people's good days and bad days, people don't get along with everybody, and you walk in with this, and it's done. It's all, and it just speeds up the time, so I thank you guys for your time and your effort with this, I appreciate it.
Thank you. When we get a little bit closer, I'll give you more detail. On
Perfect.
Map all that stuff out.
I appreciate it. I'd like to make a motion to table that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
Very good.
Bill, just check on the, capital improvement stuff, I'm looking at her.
Next matter, resolution and administrative consent order update.
I'd like to hear about committee member, Councillor Logan, please.
See, on the consent order, basically all I want to do tonight is invite somebody in to get an update, and I'm wondering who that would be. I'm thinking it would be the city engineer, right? Because the consent order is mostly about, you know, I&I and the source system and those things. So I would think that would be the city engineer must be the one handling that. We can start with him, and then if he can't answer all our questions, we can find out who can. So if somebody on the committee wants to make a motion,
I would
right in.
like to make a motion, if not, member, request them to come in.
City engineer.
Engineer Steve Kazaza,
Okay.
who I would be, maybe that's good,
Yeah.
he might be the best to answer the question.
If we're not, we'll get somebody,
Yeah.
we'll see what we can
Let's
get.
start
out
there.
of Mr.
Yeah, they
Casals.
deal with the EPA and the DEP on it, so. Which we have a,
Here,
I appreciate
so
Council
make-
Logan bringing it in, because if we ever want to get out from under it,
Mhm.
we'll have to talk to the DEP and the EPA to
Yeah.
get out from under it.
Perfect. All right. Request to hear from, so when are we doing this for next, what would that be? That would be
The fifth?
the 19th,
I'm sorry, the 19th.
is that correct?
Let's make sure that's not a holiday or anything.
19th, right?
That's fine, yeah.
Request to hear from Mr. Cazaza on the 19th regarding the Mr. Consent Order update. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. The ayes have it. You want to table it?
Motion to table.
All right. Motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. The ayes have it.
That's it for new matters, Mr. Chairman.
All right. What is the wish of the committee? Any other matters? Sorry, Mr. Councillor Romard.
Thanks. If we could take the matter from Tarrington Road off the table.
Okay. On motion to, Harrington Road, Mr.
Yep, that's,
There we go, I see it.
yes.
All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Ayes have it. Go ahead,
Mr. Chairman, if I could put in a request, and I will put it in writing to the clerk,
Okay.
that Mr. Casaza and Attorney Learned either provide in writing a formal update of where we are with the meets and bounds for Harrington Road,
Mhm.
or they come in the next meeting on the 19th to discuss.
You gonna submit that in writing to the
I
clerk?
will.
Okay. On the request, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. The ayes have it.
And move to table that.
All right, people, all in favor say aye, opposed say no, the ayes have it.
Thanks, and then one more, let me just see if the president is available.
Yes.
See if I can get her.
You run this, I run the same way, so.
Chairman, if we could take the matter of private ways off the table.
All right, we're gonna take private ways, all right, where are we, private ways?
That is on 5/27/2014.
That was before my time.
Private ways to public ways.
There we go.
Public ways to private ways.
Yeah. We're gonna take, public ways, resolution regarding converting private ways to public ways, all in favor say aye. Opposed say no, ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just reason for taking it off the table, here maybe the president can speak on it, just to get an update of where we are. As folks can see, this was brought in almost 4 years ago, almost 4 years ago, it'll be in May. And to my knowledge, to the best of my knowledge, we've gone back and forth with it in many ways. We've had some constraints regarding the street listings with the clerk's office, but I think as a committee this year, I would really like to push this and see if we can make some progress. So having said that, we can hear from the president regarding, from her perspective, where we are with this and where she thinks we might go with it.
I'd like to hear from our committee member, Council President LeBlanc.
Well, thank you, and thank you for talking about this evening. As you mentioned, this came in a while ago, and it was a resolution suggesting that we pursue the conversion of private ways to public ways in the city. At the time, we learned that there were other communities that were doing that, and that there was perhaps a benefit beyond eliminating all of the confusion that residents have around living on a private way, that there would be a benefit to the city with the Chapter 90 money, because the funds received from the state is in part, it's my understanding, based on a formula that includes the actual, you know, the mileage of you know, your ways in the city. So at the time the resolution was brought in, I initiated it, but it had overwhelming support of the councilors on the council at that time. 12 of 13 councilors signed on to that resolution. As you mentioned or alluded to, in committee, there have been, you know, some obstacles. And one of the obstacles is that you need to have a good, up-to-date, certified street listing in order to be able to move forward. Now, the clerk can correct me if I'm wrong, but the certified street listing that this, or that the then Public Works Committee was provided, and maybe the clerk could get copies to the new members of this committee, went back to 2004. So there was all kinds of conversation about how to get that, how to best get that updated. And I do have some other things to say about maybe some strategies for moving this forward, because I know that you are committed to moving this forward. I know the chairman has talked about this issue during campaigns. I've had some conversations with, you know, Councillor LeBlanc, and he actually sort of has a perspective similar to mine, and maybe how this committee could start to move this forward. And the at-large councillor from Crestview, certainly I know that this is a priority. Now, I'm not sure how many private ways there are in Ward 8, but this is a big issue. And you know, in the pushback that we got on this issue, when we get pushback is, well, you know what, we have a process in place. You know, if more than 50% of the residents want to do this, they can go through the petition process, and then they can hurry up and pay their percentage and then the city will repay. And that's just so confusing for people. Many young couples, when they buy their homes in the city of Waltham on a private way, they have no idea what that means until they have a problem and they call up and they find out they're not gonna get help. So it's just very convoluted, and what you hear a lot for pushback is, well, for years, people have been paying to have their private way done. So why should anybody going forward get this for free? You know what? I live at 55 Berkeley Street in Waltham. When my neighborhood went through this process to have the streets redone, we live on a corner, the corner of Berkeley and Banbury. My mother was a widow. My mother was working several jobs. She couldn't afford that, but that was the process. We had to pay the frontage on Banbury and we had to pay the frontage on Berkeley. So when I heard this pushback, why should anybody else ever get it for free if some in the past have had to pay for it? I ran it by my mother. I said, what do you think of converting private ways to public ways? She said, well, I had to pay for it. Why should somebody else get it for free? Exactly what I was hearing the pushback would be. My response was, sometimes you need to fix things going forward. And this is a situation where we need to fix it going forward. I am not suggesting in any way, nor do I think any councillor is suggesting in any way, that if the majority of residents on a private way want to maintain their private way, they like their potholes, they don't want to risk anybody cutting through, nobody is going to force this on them. But there has to be a better way for those who want their private way converted to a public way. They pay the same taxes as everybody else, and they should be getting the same services as everybody else. So I guess now the clerk can let you all know where we are with updating the street list. That'd be you.
That's me. So, you know, when I was looking through this, I ended up finding something going back to maybe 2011 that said that, so the 2004 street listing has the streets, and that's the listing that's pretty much been used, maybe going back to the 30s, I think, if I went into those books. The problem with the listing is it doesn't have the street, the order, it doesn't identify the order that adopted it, and it doesn't identify the sort of length of the street. It's only a list of streets, and so I think it's been identified as something that should be done where you sort of start at the top. You start at Adams Street, take a look at what year it was made a street, what the order number is, you know, get all these. There are books with the older ones, but get them all into one place with those layouts and orders, and then you have your sort of street listing. Once you know what you have, then you look at sort of what you don't have. In a lot of the cases, those are going to be the private ways. And at that point, maybe hire someone to do the sort of deed research to complete the list. So I think that there's some work that, what is for now my office needs to do, in order to sort of get the public list in whatever items on the private list we can identify with that history. It's just it's a project that will take time.
Well, and could you sort of fill in some of it, because this committee or the committee prior had actually moved this along where we were trying to hire somebody, and that, yeah. You know, you want to.
So I have had some conversation with the mayor, and I think her take is you should get to the point with the records that you have in your office that you can research, that you can put together before we go out and hire a title examiner to do hire once, which I think makes sense. It's just I have to figure out a way to allocate the resources of the office in order to accomplish that. And so right now we have a census going on, and
can I ask, is this something that we're going to be able to do through ordinance, accepting private ways as public ways, or are we going to?
I think you need a special act.
So we're going to have to do a special act for it.
I think so.
Okay.
Probably.
And there's nothing preventing us from moving forward in pieces, correct? I mean, it doesn't have to be
The
all
thing
or
that's
nothing
stopping you
upfront.
from moving it along in pieces is if you don't have a certified street listing. So if you're saying to certify part of them to move along in pieces, I don't necessarily know that that makes sense.
So what if the strategy was to begin, again, just to do something, to begin with those ways that are currently a combination of both private and public?
Okay, so that's the point at which I probably need a title examiner to come in and look at the private ways, or look at the survey and planning, but the problem is then I'm not working from a street listing, so what I'd be certifying as I research this individual street, I think it's more important for the city to have a street listing that it can count on than to sort of piecemeal move.
Absolutely.
I don't know, that's my, I think that to segment just those streets and do the research on them, when you know that you have to do the full street listing. If you wanna tell me that my priorities are different,
No,
that's
and I
fine,
would
but-
say in fairness to you and the office, this has only recently been put in your hands. Because up until recently, the committee thought we were proceeding in a way that we were gonna hire somebody to do this work. And that was sort of the direction it was going, and then it got stepped back to the clerk's office doing some of the initial groundwork. And it is in fact the responsibility of the clerk to maintain a certified street listing. Obviously, there's a lot of things going on. I mean, what is your timeline?
I'd hope to hopefully have the initial work done by the end of the summer. And that's where I am, because this is a multi-month project, not a multi-week project.
I'm done.
I'm not sure what it would take and sort of the skill set, but is this something a dedicated college or high school summer intern could do?
Yeah, probably if I got the right person over the summer, it's probably something I could assign to a summer intern and with the right supervision.
Is that something we could request from you or the mayor, or is it something we have to put in the
I can request it from HR when they assign the summer worker. No?
Awesome. I would suggest we do that.
But
We have to do something. We have to do something. So if that's they can take the low hanging fruit, then we use that to take the low hanging fruit. I don't know. Would you rather not?
no. I see my predecessors raising his hand in the air.
I'd like to hear from off-committee member.
Just to enlighten everybody, in 2004, I did that complete street listing.
Last one we
Council
did.
wanted it. I went through the engineering department, half of the records the engineering department doesn't have, which they're supposed to have, because they're the ones that make it private and public. And I went through every street in the city, every listing I could do, everything that was private, and there was about 52 streets, I think, that I couldn't find any record of, any order of, nothing. So it's deeper than just having a college kid come in here. You're gonna have to have someone search it through Cambridge or wherever.
And that's the point, but that's what I'm saying, we
yeah.
get them to do the low-hanging fruit, to certify what we can, and then we have a gap of those that we can't, then we, farm it out. And I think that's what the mayor was saying and such, and if you wanna go back to college, you're looking for work, let us know, but I mean, something like that, we need to
But
start someplace, so
that's the problem.
let's
is
get the low-hanging
engineering
fruit
department
done.
doesn't have a
Let's
complete listing.
find out what that gap is, and then we can price it out for what we need to do. I think we need to do something, so. With that, I think we're running out of time,
Right, we
so
definitely out of time.
unless there was someone else.
Yeah, Councillor LeBlanc.
one of the thoughts is if it's too big of a undertaking, it just gets kicked down the road because it's too unnerving to just go and convert all these streets. I live in a private way, want it to remain a private way because I live next to Bentley College, and now we just open the floodgates to them parking there. So, but I think what we need to do, besides the street listing of the private to, the public to private, you know, if you wanna have a fiddler at your wedding, you gotta pay for it. So,
If you wanna have what?
a fiddler at your wedding, somebody has to pay him if he's gonna play. So, the problem we're gonna end up is on, as you're finding out, on public ways, if you wanna add granite curbs, there's a betterment charge, because it wasn't there. On private ways, some of them, the private way I live on, we have all granite curbs and it's a new street. So there would be no betterment there. So of these public and private ways, which ones have curbs and which ones don't? Because, like Councillor LeBlanc's mother, you can do a betterment and have it on your taxes, but you have to bring it up to the city standards of granite curbs. Or you can have your street just paved and skip the curbs, you can just hire a private contractor and do that. So we need to have a list of which ones would be betterments, or even if we skip that, if we came up with, because as you found, it's like, it's a process to go and find out what the costs are. So, okay, you have a private way, it's X number of dollars a square foot, a linear foot to add granite curbs across the board. And if it's a public way, the betterment is X number of dollars, you know, and it could be a different, but at least you can, someone with a tape measure can figure this out in 10 minutes as opposed to, you've been at Harrington Road for how long?
In the essence of time, I absolutely agree with you, but in terms of, rather than debating how we would do it, really the point here is, we need, as the clerk said, we need a certified street listing. That's the issue. Before we can even go anywhere with this, the city needs a certified street listing. That's really
Point of parliamentary, not even, point of parliamentary order. I do, Councillor Romard, you don't have the floor. Councillor Blank, you have the floor. It's your turn to speak. This is not a go back and forth. I love the parliament that you guys like to have, but honestly, now you're into license and franchise, so I gotta stop you.
Okay. Would you like to,
Give the floor, make a motion to adjourn.
table?
Yeah.
Table, all in favor say aye,
Aye.
opposed say no.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, all in favor say aye,
Aye.
opposed say no.
Right.